The tremor in his hand started during the opening monologue. Staff Sergeant Michael Rodriguez gripped the armrests of his seat in the third row, trying to steady himself as Jimmy Fallon's voice echoed through Studio 6B. The laughter around him felt distant, muffled, like he was hearing it through water. It had taken Michael 6 months to work up the courage to attend a taping of The Tonight Show. His wife, Sarah, had bought the tickets as a surprise for his 32nd birthday, hoping that something normal, something fun, might help pull him out of the darkness that had consumed him since returning from Afghanistan. "You used to love comedy shows," Sarah had said gently. "Remember how we'd watch Jimmy together before your deployment? You'd laugh so hard you'd wake up the neighbors." That felt like a lifetime ago, before the explosion, before watching his best friend die, before the nightmares that turned every peaceful moment into a battlefield. "Michael wore his dress uniform tonight," Sarah's idea. "You should be proud," she'd whispered as they entered the studio. But all Michael felt was the weight of medals he didn't think he deserved for surviving when others didn't. The show progressed normally through the first segment. Jimmy interviewed a popular actress about her new romantic comedy. The audience laughed at all the right moments. The Roots provided perfect musical accompaniment. Everything was exactly as it should be in the controlled environment of late-night television. But during a commercial break, something shifted. Jimmy was chatting with audience members, his usual warm interaction with fans, when his eyes landed on Michael. Maybe it was the rigid posture. Maybe it was the way Michael's eyes darted toward the exits. Maybe it was simply intuition. But Jimmy stopped mid-sentence and stared. "Sir, are you okay?" Jimmy called out, his comedian's instincts immediately recognizing that something was wrong. Michael's breathing had become rapid and shallow. The studio lights suddenly felt like the harsh sun of the Afghan desert. The sounds of the crew moving equipment became the rumble of approaching vehicles that might be carrying explosives. "I'm sorry," Michael whispered, starting to stand. "I need to leave." But his legs wouldn't cooperate. The panic attack that had been building since he'd entered the studio finally crashed over him like a wave. His hands shook violently, sweat beaded on his forehead despite the air conditioning. Sarah reached for him, her face filled with concern and helplessness. She'd seen these episodes before, watched her husband disappear into memories of war while sitting safely in their living room. Jimmy didn't. He left his mark entirely, abandoning the planned show format as he had countless times before when humanity called. But this was different. This wasn't about entertainment or touching moments for television. This was about a man in crisis. Jimmy walked directly into the audience, his production team watching in confusion as their host ignored every protocol and timeline. "Hey, what's your name?" Jimmy asked softly, kneeling beside Michael's seat. "Michael Rodriguez," he managed to say between ragged breaths. "Staff Sergeant, sorry, I can't." "Michael, you don't need to apologize for anything," Jimmy said, his voice stripped of all performance, all entertainment value. "Can you tell me what you need right now?" "I need to get out of here," Michael whispered. "The noise, the lights, it's too much." Jimmy looked around the studio at the bright lights, the bustling crew, the hundreds of audience members watching this unfold. He made a decision that would cost the network thousands of dollars and throw off every carefully planned segment. "Cut the lights," Jimmy called to the production booth. "All of them except the work lights." "Jimmy, we're in the middle of," a producer's voice crackled through his earpiece. "Cut 'em now," Jimmy said firmly, "and kill the music. Everyone, I need complete quiet for a moment." The studio transformed. The harsh television lighting dimmed to a soft glow. The Roots set down their instruments. 300 audience members fell silent, sensing they were witnessing something important. In the gentler lighting, Michael's breathing began to slow slightly. "Better?" Jimmy asked. Michael nodded, though his hands still trembled. "Michael, I want to ask you something, and you can say no. But would it help to talk about where you've been, what you've seen?" For a moment, Michael looked like he might bolt for the exit. Sarah squeezed his hand encouragingly. "Afghanistan," Michael said quietly. 3 tours. Lost my squad leader and my best friend in an IED explosion 6 months ago. Been having trouble adjusting since I got home. The studio remained perfectly silent. Even the camera operators had stopped moving, instinctively understanding that this moment required stillness. What was your friend's name? Jimmy asked. Tommy Patterson. He was 23, had a baby girl he'd never met, always talking about getting home to teach her to ride a bike. Jimmy sat down on the floor next to Michael's chair, completely abandoning any pretense of hosting a television show. Tell me about Tommy, Jimmy said simply. And slowly, haltingly, Michael began to talk about Tommy's terrible jokes that always made everyone laugh anyway, about how Tommy shared his care packages from home with soldiers who never got any, about how Tommy died trying to shield civilians from the blast that should have killed them both. As Michael spoke, something remarkable happened. His breathing evened out, his hands stopped shaking. The words he'd been carrying like stones in his chest for months began to flow. The audience listened in complete silence. These weren't the rapid fire celebrity anecdotes they'd come to hear. This was raw, real, and infinitely more important. The crowd was bemused, calm. And he said, Michael, Jimmy said when the story was finished, Tommy sounds like he was an incredible person. And you know what? I think he'd be proud as hell that you're here tonight. Trying to find your way back to normal? Some days I don't think I deserve to be here when he's not, Michael admitted. Can I tell you something? Jimmy asked. I've never served in the military. I've never seen what you've seen or carried what you're carrying. But I know something about guilt, and I know something about honoring the people we've lost. The best way to honor Tommy isn't to punish yourself for surviving. It's to live. It's to find moments of joy again. It's to remember that coming home is just the first step. Learning how to be home is the real mission. Jimmy stood up and addressed his audience directly. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to meet Staff Sergeant Michael Rodriguez. He's served our country with honor and distinction, and he's fighting a battle that continues long after the war ends. Michael, would you do something for me? What? Michael asked. Would you come up on stage, not because I want to put you on display, but because I want 300 people to show you the respect you've earned. I want you to feel what it's like when a room full of Americans gets to properly thank you for your service. Michael hesitated. I think I can handle. We'll keep the lights low, Jimmy promised. No pressure, no performance, just recognition. Sarah squeezed her husband's hand. You can do this, baby, for Tommy. Slowly, Michael stood up. With Jimmy's supportive hand on his back, he walked to the stage. His legs felt unsteady, but he kept moving. When they reached the center of the stage, Jimmy turned to face the audience. This man has given more for this country than most of us will ever be asked to give. He's lost friends, he's seen things no one should see, and he's carrying burdens that are invisible but real. Michael, this applause isn't about entertainment. This is about gratitude. The audience rose to their feet as one, but it wasn't the typical energetic applause of a television taping. It was something deeper, more respectful, a sustained, heartfelt recognition that went on for nearly 2 minutes. Michael stood there, overwhelmed but not panicked. For the first time in months, he wasn't thinking about the explosion or Tommy's last words. He was present in this moment, feeling the genuine appreciation of strangers who understood that freedom isn't free. When the applause finally died down, Jimmy pulled out his personal business card. Michael, this has my direct number, not for publicity, not for show business, for whenever you need someone to talk to who won't judge, won't try to fix you, but will just listen. PTSD isn't something you get over. It's something you learn to live with, but you don't have to live with it alone. Jimmy then did something unprecedented. He removed his Tonight Show pin from his lapel, a small golden pin that every staff member received, symbolic of being part of the show's family. This represents belonging to something bigger than yourself, Jimmy said, pinning it to Michael's uniform. You already earned your place in something bigger when you served our country, but now you're also part of our family here. You're always welcome in this studio, Michael, always. Michael's eyes filled with tears, but for the first time in months, they weren't tears of anguish. They were tears of relief, of feeling understood, of being reminded that he wasn't alone. Thank you, Michael whispered. I haven't felt normal in so long. Tonight, for just a few minutes, I felt like myself again. The episode that aired became one of the most viewed in Tonight Show history. But more importantly, it sparked a national conversation about veteran mental health and the invisible wounds of war. Michael began attending therapy regularly. He started calling Jimmy's number when the nightmares got too bad, and Jimmy always answered. Slowly, with support from his wife, professional help, and the reminder that his sacrifice was valued, Michael began to heal. 6 months later, Michael returned to the show, this time as a planned guest. He'd started a non-profit organization helping other veterans with PTSD, using his experience and Jimmy's platform to reach soldiers who felt as lost as he once had. Tommy would have loved this, Michael told Jimmy during his return visit. He always said the best way to honor the fallen is to help the living. The Tonight Show now reserves one seat at every taping for a veteran, and Jimmy always makes time to personally thank them for their service. It's a small gesture that grew from one man's panic attack and another man's decision to choose compassion over entertainment. And in Michael's home, next to his Purple Heart and Bronze Star, sits Jimmy's Tonight Show pin, a reminder that healing happens not in isolation, but in connection, and that sometimes the bravest thing a warrior can do is admit he needs help finding his way home.